Hi, my name is Alex Pentek and I work here at the National Sculpture Factory as an artist, creating large-scale, site-specific work. I grew up pretty much in Ireland since the age of 10. Before that, I lived in York City, Yorkshire, in England. Growing up in Ireland was ideal in lots of ways, you know, lots of fishing and a bit of shooting as well, and living in the country. Up until secondary school, I went to school in Cork here, and then later on to art college here at the Crawford College of Art and Design. Ever since the age of, I can remember, 3, I was drawing. You know, I had a pencil in my hand. But no, it wasn't quite what I expected. I knew what was basically going to happen. I actually wanted to learn how to paint. I was convinced I was going to be a painter. But it turned out I was rubbish at painting and colour, that is. Sort of drew on skills that I picked up in secondary school, really, engineering and woodwork, using chisels and constructing things. And I turned out to be pretty okay at doing that, and I enjoyed doing that. So the structure of the course was, first year was you tried everything in art school, and then second year up to degree year you specialised in one main subject with a secondary subject as well. And so I focused on sculpture, which meant that I could use any material that I could get my hands on. I do like sheet steel. There's a couple of things about sheet metals that I find attractive. I think because there's the geometry of a flat surface, it only wants to curve in one direction or the other. And so to manipulate that material, you have to sort of think in a geometric way that suits the materials. So actually paper construction informs all of that quite a lot. I have a long-time love for origami, interest in origami, and I often make things in paper and card first, and then upscale them. But sheet steel is I just find it a pleasure to work in. To imagine things and deconstruct them out of sheet and then create them on a larger scale. And of course, with sheet steel, it opens up the possibilities of working on truly large scale, which I find very exciting. Because it was such a complex piece with 9 feathers with veins, it was not really practical to make a small scale model without it looking lumpy or not true to how it was going to look. So I didn't go down that route, although afterwards I did make paper models for my own, just for my own study of the relationship of the feathers, to get the spacing right. So I made visual representation. So basically I began sketching, drawing, and then I went into SketchUp, 3D modeling program, freeware, and I used that to make the organic forms of these feathers. It doesn't like doing organic things. It likes straight lines, so you have to think around that. But I guess that comes back to working in sheet metals, that to do something organic or curved in sheet metals, you've got to think sort of outside the box a little bit. Coming back to the overall look of the work, and perception, how it's perceived, even though it's technically a series of tubes and square section bars, which up close is actually very architectural and robust. This is large scale industrial materials depicting feathers, which is kind of a bit ironic. So when you walk away from it, or when you're at a distance from the work, they look actually quite light and ethereal, and they've got this permeable surface that you can see through. So I enjoyed that sort of, it becomes almost like an impressionist image that's in the mind's eye of the beholder. So you see feathers, but when you walk up close, you realize it's steel. The fact that it's permeable, that you can see through the work, really allows the surrounding landscape to become part of the work. And so, views of the trees through the work and the waterway there, it's, it sort of makes the landscape and the work kind of blend. And blurred boundaries is something I'm very, very interested in. I'd hoped to have laser cut sections for the veins of the feathers. It'd be a lot easier for me if I'd done that. But there was a problem, because I wanted them as thick as they were at 10 millimeters. To do that from sheet so close at 10 millimeter spacing, the heat from laser cutting causes it to warp quite a lot. I used square bar and basically drew an outline in 10 mil square bar on the floor, and then filled in a section using off-cut 10 mil scraps as spacers to get this perfect 10 millimeter spacing. I had a look at it and I was very happy with the results. It looked chunky and it looked light at the same time. I was pleased. So I knew that was going to work. It was a problem, and that was that each vein took 6 welds. So over an entire feather with approximately 300 veins. That's, you know, and times 9, it's approximately 18,000 wells plus another 2,000 wells easy on the makeup of the rest of the work. So there's over 20,000 wells in the entire work. And that took a year to make. It meant basically a lot of crawling around on my hands and knees and drawing the feather, you know, outlines and filling them in repetitively. And the making of the work actually became almost like a mandala in steel. You know, that it was a meditative process where I was thinking of all of the history that was going through my mind. I was, you know, always mindful of what this meant. And it kind of made me feel better about the way I was doing it, because I wanted the finished materials to be respectful of the history and the story as well. I wanted the work to visually communicate through the materials as well, the kind of the human factor, the human element, I guess, you know, the handmade human factor, that when you look at that as an outsider, someone can see that work and see that some person has made all of this, and it has an intended meaning, and that adds significance to the piece, hopefully. Considering all of this history, you know, I wanted to obviously reflect that specific history, but for me, the act of humanity that the Choctaw shows a bigger story that can be taken on a global context, really. And that is standing together against adversity and humanity, you know, showing kindness to one another.